As the year 2023 comes to a close, I can't help but think of the endless possibilities that the new year will bring to me in this life, constantly consumed by gratitude and anticipation as we inch closer to 2024. But the older I get, the more the last week of the year becomes a point of reflection more than focusing on new goals and opportunities that the next 365 days will bring me. Constantly wondering how I ended up in certain points in my life, whether that be for the better or for the worst, wondering if I just made certain decisions differently, how would my life look at this current point in time? What's good, guys? It's Alissa. If you're new here, hello. I know you're wondering, what the hell? I clicked on a Fionna and Cake video. Why is this girl getting philosophical? Well, as I watched the last episodes of Fionna and Cake, I knew I wanted to do a video on it, but I wanted to do the video right then and there. But I just couldn't bring myself to conceptualize what it even was that I wanted to say in that video. I'm a person who believes that timing is always very important. There are many videos that I've wanted to do on this channel, but they just didn't resonate with where my headspace was in that moment. For instance, with my Bob's Burgers video, I had plans to do a completely different video that week, but I had watched the Amazing Rudy episode, and at that moment I decided I'm gonna write a script right now and record this video in a turnaround time of 48 hours. That is the second most viewed video on my channel to date. And sometimes I wonder, what if I did decide to do that video that I had originally planned? How would that video even have done? And that's no different with this Fionna and Cake video. I have no idea how this video is gonna perform, but I feel like it's important to listen to myself and my creative flow, or lack thereof sometimes. One thing that stuck with me in episodes 9 and 10 of Fionna and Cake was the recurring themes about choices. I think about choices all the time. Like, if I didn't wear that specific t-shirt, would I have gotten that specific compliment on my outfit that day? Or the usual way that I walk to the mailbox? What if I decided to take a different path one day? How drastically would that change the outcome of the rest of my day? This correlation stemmed from episode 10 titled Cheers, where Simon realizes he was being selfish and allowed Betty to continue down her journey of being obsessed with Simon and only doing things that he wanted to do. But all of Simon's choices led them down the path of the crown and got them to the point where they are now. And this left Simon wondering, if he would have chosen to do some of Betty's choices, what would life look like for them in their love story? As it was established in the original Adventure Time series, Betty sacrificed her physical form and became Gold Betty in order to keep Simon safe. That was the conclusion of a love story that we followed throughout the entire Adventure Time series. In Fionna and Cake episode 8, we learn the origin of what we know to be Simon and Betty's tragic romance. But in episode 9 and 10, Betty and Simon are reunited. Gold Betty transfers Simon's conscience into Shermie's in order to keep him safe from the power of the crown, after being free from its control after so many years. That would ultimately undo everything that she has worked towards to get to this point. But even in his transferred consciousness, Simon is firmly set on finding the crown in Shermie and Beth's universe to bring the magic in Fionna and Cake's universe back. But knowing all he's been through to be free of the crown's madness, why would he sacrifice himself in this way? I touched on this a little bit in one of my previous Fionna and Cake videos, but Simon feels as though his life has no linear purpose after losing Betty and losing his passion as an antiquarian in his current timeline. He feels as though he's a pawn in other people's lives to allow them to propel forward.
I only offered to become Ice King because I felt my life didn't matter.
In the finale of Adventure Time, I think that he saw his whole life ahead of him once he and Betty were able to finally see each other again after all that time. But when Betty decided to sacrifice herself, Simon was having a hard time finding his place in Ooh without her. We follow Simon as his conscience is inside Shermie's body. Simon, with the help of Beth, finds a Choose Your Adventure book where characters Casper and Nova are on a quest to find the Ice Crown. By the end of the book, Simon is met with a tough decision to choose to allow Nova to hold the door open long enough for Casper to grab the crown, but Nova would be smashed. Or drink a potion that will give him strength to break the door open and grab the crown, with the downside of being Casper will forget Nova ever existed. Simon doesn't want any of these choices, and to be honest, they do suck. But Beth points out that maybe there could have been other choices if he hadn't chosen Casper's options the whole time. In Beth saying this, Simon realizes the correlation between this Casper and Nova Choose Your Adventure and his relationship with Betty. Throughout the relationship, Simon has never stopped to think about what Betty wanted to do. Although Betty was fine with following Simon down his path, in doing so, she lost her own autonomy. We're taken back to the moment Simon reconnects with Betty at the bus stop before she leaves to study in Australia for 6 months. Simon can't help but think about what their life would be like if he decided to get on that bus and follow Betty's dreams versus giving up on hers to follow his. But of course, we'll never know what the other outcome would be. And just like the Choose Your Adventure book, he can't go back and change those decisions.
You gave me a second chance, and I've wasted it.
We all know that the current timeline is not the best as far as living a simple life, but in the unknown, it's easy to fantasize that the other decision could have been better. But in reality, we just never know. And although Betty may have gotten the short end of the stick as far as our current timeline, Simon may have never gotten the character development that we see after all this time in the future. And it simply just wasn't in his personality to have made that decision to go with Betty in that moment at the bus stop. So Simon can sit in the shoulda, coulda, wouldas of his decisions, but the best choice is always to learn from that and make better decisions for your future. Because the Simon that we meet in episode 1 of Fionna and Cake is not the Simon that we know by the end of episode 10. And it wasn't until episode 10 that Simon finally let go of being attached to the Ice Crown and the Ice King. Young, hopeful Simon, the antiquarian who was fascinated in discovering ancient artifacts, had no idea the turmoil that came with actually discovering them. Neither did Betty, but they can't beat themselves up over something they simply did not know. They can only learn from their experiences and keep pushing forward.
We could have made better ones, but I don't have any regrets. You were a wonderful experience.
We literally watch Fionna go from a selfish character who believes that her dreams were the only one that mattered to a character that made the decision to save her entire universe and share it with everyone. The Fionna that we meet in the beginning was annoyed with her boring world, impulsive, and pushed her way through life. What Fionna went through was definitely not a breeze, but in contrast to Simon taking hundreds of years to get to the point that he's at now, all it took was Fionna to have one adventure for her to be the person that she always wanted to be. Like, come on, not accepting an invitation to join a roller derby team? That seemed like such an obvious choice as a viewer from the outside looking in, and I'm glad that she did decide to join them in the end. And Fionna could have easily gave in to feeling like an imposter for wanting to be a hero, especially with the Scarab constantly badgering her about being an abomination. Sometimes we feel like in order for our lives to be better, our lives have to change so drastically to become the people that we want to be, or to even get started on the things that we want to do. Fionna wanted to add magic to her world in order for her to be the person that she dreamt of being, instead of realizing that she was already that person. And even others could see that in her before she even seen it in herself. Hunter. And sometimes the things that we really want in life are just not for us. Because once Fionna was in the magical world that she always wanted, it was just too much. The stakes were too high and she was not ready for those kind of problems, especially when they started having real consequences.
Please, I take it back. I want this world.
In a lot of ways, life is like the scientific method. Walk with me on this one. Obviously, you know the steps to the scientific method, I hope. Question, research, hypothesis, experiment, analyze the data, then draw your conclusion. Then the cycle just starts over and over and over. There's nothing wrong with constantly getting to the point of the observation question portion of the scientific method. And in this case, in life, as long as you reach the point of getting to the conclusion after going through the rest of those steps. And here's where I would say it's so important to be self-aware for the majority of the time. It can be easy to lose yourself in outside influences and do things to serve other people and not yourself. Unfortunately for the Lich, he didn't get to the conclusion portion of the scientific method because he was turned into Play-Doh by Gold Betty. After his observation of what is the purpose of life, after he spent the entirety of his serving Gold and succeeding at wiping all life from existence. And if you've watched my previous Fionna and Cake videos, I'm a firm believer in constantly reinventing yourself. And as the new year approaches and we take this time to sit and reflect on our previous 365 days, it's important that we return to a forward-thinking mindset. And it's not lost on me that in the end, to make everything work, it took Fionna, Cake, and the residents of X City to come together and save their world from the Scarab. And the older that I get, the more that I realize that it's so important to have people around you that share common interests that you do. A lot of things that I've accomplished in my life, I can directly attribute to having a community of people around me that are invested in my success or care that I won't fail, and vice versa. So one of my goals this year is to actually focus more on community. Since I had lost my way a little bit in the past year and felt like I had to do so many things alone, when in hindsight, a lot of what kept me going and kept me focused was the fact that I had a solid community of people behind me. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you want to keep up with me outside of YouTube, you can follow me on Twitter or Instagram. All that information along with the music that I use in my videos are always in the description box down below. But if you made it to the end of this video, make sure you give this video a big thumbs up, make sure you subscribe to my channel, and make sure you hit that notification bell to stay up to date with posts and uploads from me. But for now, I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. Happy New Year, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Peace.